Hello, everyone. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We have a good one for you as always. On the show, we are catching you up on all things DNC. Biden was the keynote speaker last night, and he is still a little bit bitter, apparently. We'll give you the thoughts on his speech and some of the protests that followed, as well as all the other major key events, including a surprise cameo from Kamala Harris, AOC, and Sean Fain, both stepping up in front of the mic, and Hillary Rodham Clinton making her return appearance to a Democratic convention. We got all the clips, all the sound for you there. Again, we will also be taking a look at the protests that took place yesterday and the protests still to come in the DNC. So far yesterday was peaceful, and really, except for some of the other, anti-Palestinian protester Democratic delegates, which we will get into. Also, we'll take a look at the new party platform shunning a U.S. arms embargo on Israel, as we kind of re-up and take another look at the ceasefire negotiations, as 6 bodies of hostages are recovered this morning in Israel. All right, in Gaza. We have a great show for you today. Let's get started. It's Newsflash. Always exciting time during the conventions, and we got it all covered for you. We got to start with President Joe Biden. His big speech, well after midnight on the East Coast. An emotional President Biden closed out his 13th and potentially final Democratic National Convention with a song verse from his inaugural address, saying, quote, "America, I give my best to you," he boomed. He then ad-libbed, "I made a lot of mistakes in my career, but I gave my best to you." When Biden stepped away from the podium, he was comforted not just by his wife, his children, and Vice President Kamala Harris, but by a United Center packed to the gills with deeply grateful Democrats. There was chants of "Thank you, Joe. We love you, Joe." And politically, I don't know if having a love fest for Joe Biden is potentially the best thing, as he continues to be a very unpopular, very out to lunch president. But I do think, and we can see this in the polls, his approval rating is skyrocketing now that he is out of the race. He is not taking, any time to, continue this essentially just insane run for president. And now that he's out, people are generally pretty appreciative, especially in the Democratic Party faithful, maybe less so in the rest of the country. So here's a little montage put together by the New York Times. That reporting there was from Axios, to take a look at what Joe Biden had to say.
America, I love you. Let me ask you, are you ready to vote for freedom? Are you ready to vote for democracy and for America? Are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, President and Vice President of the United States? And because of you, we've had one of the most extraordinary 4 years of progress ever, period. When I say we, I mean Kamala and me. Donald Trump calls America a failing nation. He says we're losing. He's the loser. He's dead wrong. Donald Trump says he will refuse to accept the election result if he loses again. Think about that. He means it. Think about that. All of us carry a special obligation. Independents, Republicans, Democrats. We saved democracy in 2020, and now we must save it again in 2024. Folks, we just have to remember who we are. We're the United States of America. And there's nothing we cannot do when we do it together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
So there you have it. That's him kind of getting serenaded off the stage, and Jill comes to make sure he gets off all right. He's like, over here, over here. It was really just quite a, she did come in, if you see at the end of the clip there. But he did say some interesting things. He said, I think it was kind of an interesting, telling kind of Democratic, PR that they're slowly, after 10 months of the genocide in Gaza, are getting a little bit better at. He said, the people out there, they have a point. There are a lot of people, innocent people dying on both sides. It's just like, right now, there's only one side where, there are people dying every single solitary day, which I think was a little tone deaf, but it definitely shows, how some of the messaging on this on the Democratic side has evolved, and it could not have come any sooner. So yeah, for the Democrats though, the Biden's farewell was a show of grace that seemed to bury much of the guilt stemming from the successful campaign to nudge him off the 2024 ticket. But this 11:30 p.m. starting the speech was a big deal. People were not happy about that. He rejected reports, Biden did, that he's still angry at Democratic elites who pushed him to step aside, and found to be the best volunteer the Harris campaign has ever seen. Whether Biden is truly past the wounds, though, it's not really clear, because Alex Thompson, who has pretty much been the reporter to go to on the, Biden being old beat, essentially, got a text from one of the Biden top aides saying, quote, "This is awful. He literally set up a campaign and handed it over to them. Do they have to cut him out of prime time?" One longtime Biden aide texted Axios' Alex Thompson. So that kind of shows you, how bitter they are about this, and just this kind of, farcical idea that they set up the campaign. Some campaign you set up, losing in every swing state, and, going down for probably one of the worst Democratic election defeats in modern history. So, that is not something to be bragging about. Oh, you set up this great campaign. It's going to be absolutely so helpful to come. No, the moment you left, your polls skyrocketed. Kamala's polls skyrocketed. Democrats across the country saw increased political success. And it's just like, what does that tell you? What does that tell you about the project that you've been, just the Democratic, Biden world period has been propping up for these past, few days? It really is quite, remarkable. So before the convention, there was tons and tons of reporting about this in Axios. A former White House official under President Barack Obama ran into, this is a really great anecdote here, ran into Mike Barnicle, literally Mike, old guy who's clinging on to power. It's just it cannot be a more, Dickensian name that serves, tells you exactly what this guy does. So this former, young whippersnapper, and, in Washington, the Obama aides have a reputation for being a bit arrogant, a bit kind of know-it-all-y. He said, this guy, Mike Barnicle, is always on Morning Joe, big Biden supporter, long-time close friend and ardent defender of Biden. He said, "Isn't it great that fucking guy finally figured out that he had to quit?" Barnicle was tired and he wasn't having it. "What guy?" he replied. "Joe Biden," the West Wing alumnus replied. "You know something? Fuck you," Barnicle replied, "and fuck all your friends with their anonymous quotes in the papers. Put your name on it next time," he said, and kept walking. A source familiar with Biden's reaction to the story told us he might still be laughing. It's just I don't know what you're laughing about, bro. You're off the ticket. You're kind of to bow out after just weeks and weeks of all your friends and your allies just begging you, please don't make us lose like this, Joe. And, Mike Barnicle, if he cares about the Democrats winning, he should be thanking that guy for, supporting that effort. He should be apologizing, saying, "I was wrong, you were right," because that is the self-evident truth. It is really kind of he's still, you might still be laughing. It's just you're not the one that should be laughing, buddy. Nancy Pelosi, she's probably laughing right now, but I wouldn't say Joe Biden is. or should be. Biden's friends tell us that as the president heads to his Democratic National Convention send-off in Chicago, he's somewhat relieved and pretty nostalgic, but also stunned and pissed about the way he was pushed out of his re-election race. Tonight's primetime speech by Joe Biden will be a heartfelt passing of the torch. This was from yesterday. But on the opening day of the convention, Democrats are ecstatic, giddy at how far Harris has come in the 29 days since Biden bowed out. But among some in Biden's innermost circle, there's astonishment about how instantly Harris became a celebrated, glamorous star. Some Biden stalwarts blame the press for forcing him out and now seethe as what they see as fawning coverage of Harris. And, that has to be, some real next level, craziness and devotion. Like, I don't think it's hard to understand that, Harris isn't some amazing politician. She's, I'd say, probably at this point, a replacement level politician. She's a bit more confident. She's a better team around her. But what really happened was the Democratic Party had put this guy up that nobody wanted to vote for. And voters were signaling it in every possible way to, for various different reasons, signaling in every possible way to the Democratic Party for so long, they eventually just realized that they had to do it. And just the act of the Democrats giving the people anybody else to vote for, that is why we are seeing such excitement. And that excitement, it's not coming from the media. It's coming from ground level up. That massive amount of fundraising Harris raised, clear excitement for her. I think that absolutely cannot and should not be ignored when it comes to, evaluating the political picture. Let's take a look at some of the other stars of the convention, where we have Kamala Harris. She made a surprise cameo, and this was pretty funny because, we had Kathy Hochul come out and, suck the charisma out of the crowd. Kathy Hochul, New York governor, most recently known for killing the incredibly popular congestion pricing program for no reason. Just a charisma drain suck, like just really, really bad in the convention. She gave her speech last night before, Kamala Harris had to come out for an emergency pep rally. Here's how this speech sounded.
He never had to worry about anything or anyone but himself. Trust me, America, if you think you're tired of Donald Trump, talk to a New Yorker. We've had to deal with him for 78 long years. The fraud, the tax dodging, the sham university, the shady charities. We've seen him stiff contractors, rip off workers. He abuses women, brags about it, and then takes away their rights. And New Yorkers are sick of it.
Like, really rousing applause for some of the most tired and reworn, if of course true, lines about the Republican nominee Donald Trump. So that is certainly why I think Kamala had to come out for a huge pop and kind of reinvigorate the crowd with some excitement directly after. And that's, of course, Beyonce's Freedom. It's her walkout song. Great song off the Lemonade album. And it seemed like Tim Walz literally did not know that, or Doug Emhoff did not know that she was going to come out. So it seemed like it was a very last minute. Kamala had to just, really save the day there. And she gives her, her classic wave and her smile, But then they fade the way into Steve Kerr, who I think did a very good job, a lot better than Kathy Hochul. That is for sure. They played, the Bulls classics for him because it was, of course, in the United Center, which is the Bulls arena in Chicago. And I think he gave a very, very solid speech. And this is how it ended. And of course, the best part about it, I think, is it did make the liberals, or sorry, the conservatives, who really kind of flipped into that liberal role of freaking out and just being offended super easily. They're offended over the, Tim Walz white tacos thing, and now they're offended over this. This is how Steve Kerr, the Warriors and Team USA basketball coach, ended his speech.
Every day, to help people get out and vote on November 5th and elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as the next president and vice president of the United States. And after the results are tallied that night, we can, in the words of the great Steph Curry, we can tell Donald Trump, night, night.
That was a good one there. For those of you who are not sports fans, Steph Curry, he's a incredible three-point shooter for the Warriors and obviously for Team USA as well. And he'll hit a long three and then just put his hands up to his cheek and kind of lean into his cheek and go night night. So it is a really, really good kind of moment there for him there. I thought that was pretty cool. We also had Sean Fain, the UAW president since 2023, the leader of the American labor movement and one of the chief antagonists to Donald Trump. Really, really cool to see him kind of, taking a lot of wins for UAW workers, expanding the power of the UAW union, expanding, especially, I think this is very important, labor's relationship to politics, getting it really, having it a much bigger seat at the table with regards to the Democratic convention and within the Democratic Party than I think a lot of people thought possible, having Joe Biden coming out and walking on that picket line. I don't think that would happen if, Sean Fain was the president of the UAW in the same way that probably wouldn't have happened if, Hillary Clinton had been president of the country. It took, both men on both sides to come and bring that together. Here's what he had to say, really putting it in, and he's probably one of the best weapons in terms of chipping away at, Donald Trump's working class support. And reminding them to vote more in their own best interest and not somebody who, like Sean Fain says, is a scab 100%.
For the UAW and for working class people everywhere, this election comes down to one question. Which side are you on? On one side, we have Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who have stood shoulder to shoulder with the working class. On the other side, we have Trump and Vance, two lapdogs for the billionaire class who only serve themselves. So for us in the labor movement, it's real simple. Kamala Harris is one of us. She's a fighter for the working class. And Donald Trump is a scam.
Fain then takes off his shirt doesn't take off his shirt. He's wearing a suit jacket. Sorry, I don't want to be inaccurate here. He has a suit jacket, and then he takes off the suit jacket, and his shirt says "Trump's a scab." Vote for Harris there at the end, and so people are chanting "Trump's a scab, Trump's a scab." So next was Hillary. She didn't really say anything that relevant. I don't know why they really still have her at the conventions. Really somebody who I think a lot of people in the Democratic Party in the country would like to forget ever was a major national political figure. But another young woman who is really killing it out there was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. This was a really big moment for her. And I think that was a speech that, among the left, definitely, I think very fairly so, had some very mixed reviews. I think there was some good stuff to like in it. I think this was one of those moments, which was when she was essentially embracing the working class and being a bartender and saying there's nothing wrong with being working class. I think this is exactly a message of that the Democrats should be espousing. And without people like her in the party and without that general movement and force on the Democratic Party, I think this kind of rhetoric would not be happening.
Ever since I got elected, Republicans have attacked me by saying that I should go back to bartending. But let me tell you, I'm happy to any day of the week because there is nothing wrong with working for a living.
You know, that is generally a good line because, you know, a lot of people, I think, reframing that, you know, being as a bartender some sort of like a shameful thing, you know, no, you get up, you work your ass off every single day, serving people, dealing with the worst of people, you know, dealing with drunk people. Like, that is something that is a generally, like, much more of a value on our society than, you know, building monstrous buildings, ripping off contractors, you know, doing all the things that Trump did, you know, running beauty pageants and hiding out in the girls' locker room, like all the things that Trump used to do before his political life. But I definitely think that, you know, she had some other good moments. You know, talking about, we know Trump, we would sell this country for $1 if it meant lining his own pockets and greasing the palms of his Wall Street friends. And I, for one, am tired of hearing about how a two-bit union buster thinks of himself as more of a patriot than the woman who fights every single day. So a lot of good lines there. You know, Kamala Harris, I think, should be very lucky to have AOC on side. And I think, you know, that is a very appropriate way of putting it. And that's why we get, you know, some of these mixed reviews, because this was the only thing that she said in a time where she really had an opportunity to be a big voice. And she has been she's been pretty trash, you know, throughout this on Palestine. She was very late to call it a ceasefire, very late to call it a genocide. And, you know, supposedly one of her best friends, Rashid Tlaib, you know, watching her family and friends get killed by the day in Palestine, has been much, much more outgoing than this. And I wonder how she must feel, you know, just given someone that she came up with in Congress and doubtless went through tons of tough moments together, it essentially ends up saying this about Kamala in a way that I think, really all know is far from what's the reality.
And she is working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire in Gaza and bringing hostages home. In Kamala Harris, I see a leader.
So, yeah, she sees a leader in Kamala Harris, but what about, you know, AOC being a leader within herself? And I think that is why, you know, essentially my problem with AOC is I think, you know, she is a very good voice to have in terms of bringing issues up, in terms of, you know, making speeches, in terms of defending some of the more radical representatives to a certain degree, although it didn't really work that well for Cori Bush and for Jamal Bowman, because they really did not, you know, put too much effort in. But she seems to be really not willing to use any of the political power that she has to make any of these changes. And it's just like, you know, for a certain extent, you know, if you are, I think you got to pick one lane, and I think she definitely has picked one lane here. You know, I think she, because it's very, very hard to know because she doesn't give a lot of interviews. I think she treats the left, kind of the organized left, like DSA types with, you know, a lot of contempt. I think that could be, they have been a little bit too quick to, and sometimes turn their back on her, which has led to a dissolution of the relationship and her kind of getting more pushed into the arms of the centrist, you know, kind of establishment weight, you know, center of gravity in Washington. But from this to the really kind of horrible political instincts of keeping, you know, fighting hard and, you know, coming out hard for Joe Biden, keeping Joe Biden on the ticket, and, you know, trying to get this, you know, dead in the water corpse to sign on to all these left-wing things, like he's actually going to have a chance to do that. Like, you know, that is political acumen that is so stunningly bad that, like, me here sitting in my kitchen, sitting in my living room couch, could have told you that was a bad idea, because, you know, it's like you're tying all, even if things work out well, you're tying these policies to a literal corpse in Joe Biden. So not the very smartest move from her. Then turning on to this, you know, I think she has treated a big part of this, you know, kind of organized left with contempt. I don't really know what her grand motivations are, her true plan, you know, so to speak, whether it's to be in office later, whether it's to, you know, do a whole, you know, whatever. It could be a whole load of different things, right? But it does seem like, you know, she is not that proud insurgent. She is somebody who is trying to ingratiate herself to the middle of the Democratic Party, and she doesn't seem to, you know, beyond paying some lip service to some, you know, left-wing of the Democratic Party causes, progressive causes. You know, she's not going to fight for them. She's not going to be introducing bills. She's not going to, you know, be taking positions to the left of the Democratic Party in a public way. You know, it is very, very apparent that she kind of has severed this relationship with the DSA. I think they could, you know, it's a two-way street. It takes two to tango. They could have done better liaising with her But I think to take this moment, again, confirms it, to bask in the glow of the DNC, cheering her on, going crazy, interrupting her speech with chants of AOC, AOC. Like that to me shows that she has taken that, and I think it's a clear sign of many signs of the past, that she has taken that opportunity to be fully embraced by the DNC and taken the path really of least resistance to not speak out on one of the issues that's most important in the base, and that Kamala Harris is probably within the base losing the most support on, maybe second to like immigration or something, of Gaza, and really just, that was the only time she mentioned Palestine in Gaza in her speech. Like, consider with all the stuff that was going on outside. And I think that was a real sign of where she wants to be, and I think where we have to start looking at AOC as a person from now on. All right, well, there were a substantial amount of pro-Palestinian protests going on. During President Biden's speech on the first night of the DNC, protesters briefly unfurled the banner that read, "Stop Arming Israel," before it was wrestled away by convention staff. There are 3 members of the group Delegates Against Genocide who organized and carried out the action. Essam Boré, a human rights activist and delegate from Connecticut. Florida DNC member Nadia Ahmad, progressive Jewish activist Liano Sharon, an elected delegate from Michigan, were the 3 members. We were there specifically to confront President Joe Biden, says Ahmad, saying why the protesters chose to disrupt his speech. He's the one who could stop genocide by picking up the phone and making a phone call. He has not chosen to do that. And I think we can hear maybe a little bit of them here talking to Amy Goodman of Democracy Now!
Unfurled a banner that read, "Stop Arming Israel." The action took place where the Florida delegation was sitting. While some other delegates snatched the banner away, many delegates quickly raised Joe Biden placards that read, "Thank you, Joe," and "I love Joe," to block any view of the banner. More and more of those placards were brought out to cover the banner as much as possible. The protesting delegates who unfurled that banner were quickly escorted from the convention floor by security. Democracy Now! Was nearby when it happened.
And again, I don't even think the pro-Palestinian protesters here were chanting, but then, they quickly chanted "We love Joe" over and tried to cover out the sign, and it was really ripped off by the convention staff here in this video being shown on Democracy Now! And you could just see in the video the kind of irritation on the faces of the delegates.
What's your name, sir? Sir, what's your name?
My name's Liano Sharon. I'm a DNC delegate from Michigan.
And what did you do today?
Today we held up a sign protesting the murder of children in Gaza and the continuing genocide.
Watch your step, watch your step. What did the sign say?
It said, stop arming Israel.
All right, thank you. Let's keep it going. We'll watch out, get it.
And what happened?
Let's get into the tunnel. You can interview him in the tunnel, okay?
And what happened?
I just don't want you to break your ankles.
Then the people behind us grabbed a hold of the sign and tried to rip it out of our hands several times. Eventually, they succeeded.
Interview in the hall, okay?
So yeah, there's Amy Goodman, Ryan Grimm also on scene interviewing them, and apparently according to Akilah Lacey of The Intercept, it did get pretty violent. These are apparently not uncommitted delegates, but they're just normal Democratic Party delegates who teamed up for this action, and you kind of see it on this video. I guess it's more of a visual thing, so I guess the sound wouldn't be that worth it. But it really apparently was a pretty drastic reaction by the DNC. There was people hitting other, the people holding it up. This was from Nadia Ahmad, a delegate, a hijabi woman holding this protest sign. They were hit on. It's like, this is just could not be more on the nose. They hit us on the head with the "We Love Joe Biden" signs. J.B. Pritzker was close by, and they did nothing. Even the ushers did nothing. They let other people hit us and grab the sign away from us. So I think it's just so on the nose for the Democratic Party, just, holding up a sign and saying, please stop arming Israel. They're killing people on a daily basis, committing war crimes on a daily basis. And then what do you get? Just hit with signs, shut up, we love Joe. There was a clear video of them just, nailing this, poor woman on the head with these signs. And I think it shows, at least how the Democratic Party, we talked about how the RNC, wasn't fully representing the Democratic base, but I think maybe it's a little bit more so represented with the DNC here, just hitting it just like, we love Joe, shut up, we love Joe, just like conformity. Now that they have the situation that they want and they're not kind of in an uncomfortable relationship with the Democratic Party with regarding to Joe, I think it is really, really telling in terms of the character of the average American liberal on a day-to-day basis, white, black, Hispanic, whatever. If you feel, you're in that position, in that kind of, especially kind of upper class position within the Democratic Party, you just feel, please, can these people go away? Like, I don't want to have to think about this anymore. I don't want to have to deal with it. It's just like, why are you ruining the fun? Why are you, spoiling the party? This is just so shitty. Like, just go away. It's just like you let out a big loud fart and everyone just wants you to just shut up. Like, it could not be more clear. And this comes as the Democratic Party platform has, been adopted ahead of the U.S. presidential election in November. There's no mention of halting weapons in the country in the arms embargo. Essentially, it's, a complete slap in the face to, and it could not be more pro-Israel, the official Democratic Party platform, which I think is, as they continue to commit the war crimes they commit and continue to dodge ceasefire proposals, as we'll continue to talk about, this becomes more and more clear. So the party platform touts the 2016 Memorandum of Understanding, saying it's ironclad. The 2016 memorandum refers to the U.S.-Israel agreement signed under former Israeli signed under former President Barack Obama, which gives Israel $3.8 billion in U.S. military aid every year. In all of this, like, they've been working on this for a while. It is a process where, the platform committee has to vote to adopt it. That's why there were so many mentions of Joe Biden with it. But I think it's very, very telling that even as all this stuff has been going on, they didn't think in any way, there was no motion within the Democratic Party. There was no consideration for them to take a step back and saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't just be supporting the Abraham Accords. Maybe we should, actually take a mention to end the Palestinian suffering, any sort of, forward momentum towards a Palestinian state. Biden's ceasefire proposal would create conditions for a better future for the Palestinian people. At the same time, it leaves out a major demand from progressives, which is to condition U.S. military aid to Israel. And essentially, the platform touts how Biden has supported Israel's war on Gaza, including sending arms shipments and providing a diplomatic shield for Israel at the UN during votes for ceasefires regarding concern about human rights violation. In terms of the broader Middle East, the Democratic Party platform praises Biden for ensuring the Gaza war did not lead to a wider conflict in the region, which I think is a little bit premature, but we'll see. Since October 7th, the several regional countries, including Lebanon, Jordan, Iran, and Iraq, have all seen spillover violence in their territories. So again, you could argue he has already failed to prevent that. But again, bottom line, could not be, and I think encourage you, if you're a pro-Palestinian person, if you think what's going on in Palestine is bad in any way, go read that platform and go see how completely unserious they are. Just look up at least that part. It's page 83, page 93, I believe. And it goes on for about 4 pages, talking about, well, Biden did this for Israel, Biden did that for Israel. The Palestinians, they're not having the best, but, nothing, we won't change our support to Israel in any structural way whatsoever. And it's just going to have to continue unabated. So, that could not be more clear, and it could not be more, depressing. And it seems like, given the Democratic Party is happy, given that they don't have to deal with Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, they are more than happy to forget about it, shout down, and, essentially exclude and, beat up, in some cases literally with a "We Love Joe" sign, in a lot of cases metaphorically, and kind of shame the people who are actually saying, and I hope more people kind of come back to the fold with regards to Palestine, because a lot of people dropped the moment Kamala Harris became the nominee. But I hope more people come back to the fold. They realize what's going on with our weapons, our taxpayer dollars. I think, as long as the current regime in the U.S. stays in place, the current policy positions towards Israel stay in place, we'll continue to see more depravity and more, awful violence towards the Palestinians. So I think that is very, very clear. But again, especially the Democratic base, like the moral fecklessness and complete willingness to drop like a hot box of rocks the Palestinian people when it became convenient is very, very apparent. All right, let's get to some actual news from the Middle East, where we have had a new update, among other things, on the hostages. In the 6 hostages were the bodies of 6 hostages were recovered from Gaza today, according to the Israeli army. And the Israeli army has admitted that its airstrikes may have killed some of the captives whose bodies were recovered on Tuesday. According to Haaretz, the army said in March its forces have been operating near the tunnel from which the bodies of 6 Israeli hostages were recovered overnight. They said the area was previously hit by jets, and it was not clear yet if this resulted in the deaths of the captives. So I think to be interesting, their bodies in the condition they are in, that may provide some evidence to it. If there's like a single gunshot wound, and again, Hamas has said when they killed captives, excuse me, with this, I think Abu Obaida, who's the Hamas spokesperson, came out and said, one of our guards, because his family was killed in an airstrike, went off the wall and killed the hostages that he was supposed to be guarding. So, and we condemned him for that. I guess, I don't know what they do. They put him on administrative leave or whatever, a week without pay, or however that, I don't think that's obviously not how it works within Hamas. But, again, so that is a sign of at least their rational interest of keeping the hostages alive, and how they have communicated in the past. So I think it's very interesting, again, that this has happened. But it is another great example of why a lot of anti-Zionist people say that the Zionism hurts the people of Israel, and it hurts the people, especially when Netanyahu's brand of it hurts the people of Gaza. Obviously it hurts the people of Gaza more, but the people of Israel, they want to see the hostages back. I think probably the majority, maybe not as big a majority as you would expect watching U.S. media coverage, but a big majority are pretty heartbroken to see that 6 more hostages, bodies recovered, let alone the families. And especially with this news that it very well could have been Israeli actions that killed them, as it already has been in the past with straight up Israeli military shooting these hostages when they were right in front of their faces, a few months ago. That shows you it's just a complete refusal to even entertain a ceasefire and a desire to destroy as much of Gaza as possible that has been apparent through every Israeli army action throughout this war. That really has been a tragedy both for the Israeli hostages and, for the cohesion of Israeli society. And of course, primarily it's been a tragedy for the probably, north of 100,000 people that have lost their lives in the bombing, multiple bombings, daily bombings, the genocide in Gaza. So it is always very, very apparent. And it seems like, this Israeli society is fundamentally incapable of diverting itself from the path that it has continuously voted to put itself on again and again and again. Throughout this war, throughout this government that is gaining now in popularity with the Netanyahu government, going up in the polls. I think it's pretty conclusive at this point. And the outrage that, for example, that we've seen when we've seen Palestinians celebrating on beaches, trying to relax in any way, or just exposing anything other than just images of Palestinian death when they make their way into Israel, like the outrage that happens, that fuels the military campaign, that fuels the lack of desire for a ceasefire, and that fuels inevitably the death of the hostages and a less peaceful environment for all people in the region, which is a real shame. So, and that comes, speaking of a complete lack of desire for a ceasefire here, Hamas on Sunday rejected an updated U.S. proposal for a ceasefire and a hostage deal in Gaza. And when they say U.S., essentially have U.S.-Israeli here, I think it's important to say, blaming Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for moving the goalposts and for the U.S. for indulging him. So, it's pretty important to say. The White House has claimed significant progress has been made during talks in Doha over the last several days. The rejection of the new proposal, which was presented to the parties on Friday, makes President Biden's goal of getting a deal this week almost impossible. A stalemate in negotiations would likely make an attack by Iran and Hezbollah much more likely. That is, by all accounts, the reason they've been holding off this long, which I think speaks to their rationality as actors in the region relative to Israel. Both Tehran and Hezbollah have vowed revenge for the Israeli assassinations in Beirut and Tehran, but have held their fire so far. Hamas has said, after being briefed by the mediators about what happened in the last round of talks in Doha, we once again came to the conclusion that Netanyahu is still putting obstacles in the way of reaching an agreement and is setting conditions and demands with the aim of undermining mediators' efforts and prolonging the war. Hamas said the U.S. proposal aligns with Netanyahu's demands. The new U.S. proposal, it's important to say, because Hamas, I think it's also important to say, has come out and agreed to the proposal, essentially, of the ceasefire in stages of hostage release, stage 2, full hostage release, stage 3, building towards a long-term plan in terms of restructuring and working out the details of Gaza. And, of course, we talked about at the time, the insurance that the ceasefire would hold as negotiations continue. That's what Hamas wanted. And Israel essentially wanted that outlet to essentially leave the negotiations and immediately resume bombing. In terms of that was their issue with the original proposal, but it included Israel wanted to resume bombing after the first round of hostages had been exchanged, or at least a good chunk of hostages had been exchanged, and then you were supposed to go for a long-term peace. After that point, Israel didn't want the pressure to keep negotiating so that they could resume the bombing. And Hamas, the other side would say is that Hamas wanted to keep negotiating indefinitely and hold on to the hostages. But Hamas essentially agreed to that deal on U.S. terms, as Biden said it, relatively quickly. And Netanyahu has done nothing but add more and more caveats. So in this proposal that Netanyahu has demanded and the U.S. has written up here, Hamas objects to the fact that the proposal doesn't include a permanent ceasefire or comprehensive Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. So essentially now saying, not only do you have to not leave the Strip, you don't have to pull out, you can still keep your troops in multiple places within the Strip, especially in the Netzarim corridor, which cuts the north off from the south completely, of the Gaza Strip. Not only do you have to do that, but you don't even have to have a permanent ceasefire. So you could just hold off for a few months and then just start shooting again. And after those few months, you'll have all your hostages back. Why would Hamas accept that? That would be the stupidest thing for them to accept. All this sacrifice, all this blood, and it's not even going to end. It's not even guaranteed to end. You don't even have it written down that you're going to end. And the Israeli troops don't even leave the border. Why the hell would they agree to that? It's absolutely nonsensical. So not only would it be the Netzarim corridor, which cuts off from the north and the south, the proposal would also give Israel control of the Rafah crossing to control the amount of aid so they could continue to starve the Gazan people. This would be some sort of ceasefire. This would be some sort of plan that in the U.S.'s mind is apparently good in terms of reconstruction. It's so obvious they just want to deal so bad that they can tout to the idiot Democratic base. But Hamas said Netanyahu also reversed previous concessions to set new conditions on prisoner exchange processes. All this prevents the completion of the exchange deal. It is very, very, very clear that they're pushing this as much as they possibly can. The U.S. just saying, okay, Israel, we'll give you that. We just want to get this thing signed already. And then Hamas is just like, no, we're not going to let troops stay in Gaza Strip with no conditions on actually stopping fire permanently. So I think it is more than fair what they are asking for there. And they essentially agreed to the U.S. proposal from a few months ago. And I think it's very, very telling the U.S. is letting, once again, Israel drag it into a regional war and continued war generally, and on the Palestinians and genocide on the Palestinians. All right, we'll have more coverage for you Wednesday and Friday from the DNC and all the news around the world. We'll see you then. It's Newsflash.